Why take screenshots in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024? Well, you've invested in this world. Aircraft, scenery, weather engines, and yet most of the time we just fly straight through it. We don't stop. We don't look. But when you do, when you pause the sim, move the camera, and take a moment to frame the shot, everything changes. Now, I've been a photographer for years. It's not my day job, but at one point I ran a small photographics company. And the one thing I can tell you is that a great image isn't just about what you put in, it's about what you leave out. It's about focus, light, timing. And that's just as true in the sim as it is behind a real lens. And here's the magic. I can take you through with just 3 clicks, snap, crop, and adjust, how you can create an image that doesn't just make people go, wow, cool screenshot. It makes them say, wait, how did someone take that photo? I'll show you how to make a digital screenshot begin to look very realistic. You don't actually have to be able to fly that well. I'm going to show you how you can do this because I'm going to show you the quick method. Also, I'm going to show you how to use Flight Replay Tool. Previously, it was called Replay Mode. It lets you rewind your flight, pause at the perfect moment, and move the camera anywhere for a truly cinematic screenshot. More effort, but way more reward. No fancy gear, no expensive software, just flight simulator, a good eye, and a few quick moves. So, let's geek into it. Welcome to the Flying Doctor channel. In terms of the scenery add-ons for these images, yes, I used Landmark London City Pack. Originally, I purchased this via Orbix, but you can get it off the marketplace. Significantly and rather frustratingly, I haven't installed London City Airport version 2, and I could have had even more detail in there. There are some very small packages. I'm not sure what difference they make in the end, but enhanced airport graphics here by Zenitech, enhanced runway lights by FLYT simulations, and enhanced taxiway signs. You can definitely see those. That's for simmers. But these are very low cost add-ons. I should of course state that the Typhoon pictured here is an add-on as well by CJ Simulations, but you can use any aircraft in the sim. So here in this example, I've gone for the in-house Textron Aviation Cessna Citation CJ4. Oh, there you go. That feels better. I've just loaded in EGLC with Orbix. There you go. So it gives us something to play with. So here we are. I'm spawned inside the aircraft, and just a reminder that if you're in free flight, you can make all kinds of changes, one of them being towards the weather. This is not live weather, but scattered clouds, one of my favorite settings. In terms of your camera angles, the cockpit camera and the external camera give you a range of options. It's somewhat limited. We shall look at the replay tool and using the showcase camera, but it's possible to fly from one location to another and just adopt a particular external view and take the snapshot as you need. Let's talk first about the in-house built-in screenshot tool, which I think feels clunky to me. Firstly, even finding it in the first place just doesn't come naturally. It's not under the camera icon here when I route around. I needed to go into my control system and simply press photo and see what comes up. I'm under keyboard. I navigate to camera. I type in photo. And I have to wait a while, and it says photo mode toggle, and this strange control and apostrophe to toggle photo mode. I still think Flight Simulator needs to look at this. Before it was Control and V, but you can toggle into photo mode. Now I've got a gamepad attached, and when I jumped in, this is what I got, and I have got the opportunity to move around, use the controls. So the one thing I would say is a gamepad is a must-have, particularly if you're really wanting to move forward with the screenshots. Gives you much more controllability when we get into the showcase mode. But I'm able to take a photo here by just clicking on A. Might feel impressive. You can see it's given me a little picture bottom right of what I've taken, but I've got one or two concerns around this. Firstly, the screenshots that I get off this feel flat and over processed. And also noticed here that it's applied a kind of a defocus in the background. Now, this has made this image for me look like a toy plane. It actually looks like it's taken through what's called a tilt and shift lens. And that's the only justification I can give for why this would look normal. I can go into tilt and shift lenses later, but just trust me on that one. I have concerns. The screenshots can look flat and over processed. As for where to find them, this is not user friendly. Unless I'm missing something, essentially they're buried in Microsoft Flight Simulator folders, right the way through to, the navigating to the community folder for those of you who've done that. Now, I'm pretty well versed in this, but not everyone will be. So C drive, then users, then my username, then what comes back is app data, which is a hidden file. You have to tell Windows that you want to see app data. Then it's roaming. Then it is Microsoft Flight Simulator. No, I've confused myself. That's for the Steam version. It's app data. Then we go to local. Ah, yes, I remember this. Then we go to packages. Yeah, then we go to, it's Microsoft Limitless. H-I-J-K. Yeah, this is painful. And Microsoft Limitless. Then you need to go to local state. Then you get to screenshot. There we go. Phew, we're there already. And there's my screenshot buried there. So yeah, you could create a shortcut, but Microsoft aren't making it easy for people. And quite frankly, I'd rather this just ended up in my pictures. And if I click on that, I should find my image. There we are. I've just opened that up in a viewer. So come on, Flight Simulator 2024, you can do better than that. And if I've missed anything, I apologise. But really, I want to be able to use my pictures outside of the sim and have them easily accessible. In addition, it only saves as JPEG, so I've got no control over quality, and compression is, well, appealing for Flight Simulator because the images occupy less space, but actually with heavy compression, you risk losing detail. Interesting that this automatically, the images become defocused here. Compressions kills sky gradients and lighting detail. Also, there's no way that you can take this and preview or edit it immediately after capture. As I say, most people would think, just let me have it in my pictures folder and I'll let another program do that. And it also doesn't support HDR tone mapping properly. There's, in fairness, only as far as I'm aware will Nvidia screenshot let you do that if you're running in HDR. If you try and take a picture using, say, one of the other tools that I'll suggest, you'll find that they can look washed out. But Nvidia, if you're using HDR, will give you that full rich picture. But yeah, so I just find it clunky and a bit unhelpful. The one positive thing I would say, and I'll refer back to this when we look at composition later, is that you do get this grid which allows me to speak about something called the rule of thirds. And as a kind of guideline for what a well-composed photo looks like, turn it on its head, think, why does a photo appeal? And then you go back and you find because it's composed well. One understanding is if you were to divide a picture into 3 squares by 3 squares with sort of 2 lines, you can see 2 vertical lines coming down here and 2 lines coming across. Apologies if you can't quite see my mouse. But if you put the image in where the lines intersect roughly, you will find as a rough guide that gives you an appealing image. We can talk more about that later, but that's why I am not a great fan of the in-house camera. What it will do is take away all of the screen access that's there, but you can do that and you can just do a quick crop of a screenshot and you're really not losing a huge amount of data. It can be interpolated back up. So what other options do we have? Well, one, if you're using an Nvidia card, is GeForce Overlay. I've opened the Nvidia app here. You'll see this little triangle. It says Open Overlay. You can use Alt and Z instead. If you just click that, it will just introduce you to the fact that, yes, the overlay switched on. Alt and F1 save a screenshot. It is saved to your Nvidia folder in your video folder, not in your My Pictures folder. Oh, we've changed liveries in the background, but Alt F1, there we go. You get a little notice there to say screenshot has been saved. And in my case, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. There you go. There's the image, and you can see straight away in the background. No change to the background for us. And also, it's a 10 megabyte file. I'm dealing with less loss in the saving process. Game bar is another option for people. To enable it, you go to Settings, Gaming, Xbox Game Bar, and make sure Open Xbox Game Bar using this button on the controller is on. If you're using a controller, you can have it linked to one of the main buttons. You can also turn on background recording, although a bit careful with that because it can impact the performance of the sim. But it's just Windows and G to open Xbox Game Bar. It's so well managed that I can see it here, but you won't see it at all. And then to take a screenshot, it's Window plus Alt plus Print Screen, or you can just click on Capture, which I've just done. The Xbox Game Bar screenshots are saved in under Videos and Captures. There we are there, easy to find, and there's the image that we took. Xbox saves screenshots in PNG format, which is quite a high quality format. And just a reminder, the advantage of the Nvidia Overlay is that it will allow you to capture images in HDR. I've not used that in my processing here. I rely more on 1 or 2 clicks in post-processing using Photoshop Express, but there are lots of other programs out there that you could use. You need to make sure that your monitor supports HDR, so it's recognized in the first place. You need to enable HDR in Windows settings. I've done that here. Then you need to restart Microsoft Flight Simulator, and you need to go into the settings under graphics right at the top, and there's a little box to tick, a tab to tick to enable HDR. So you have to go some way. I've not missed it, to be honest. I'm more interested in the detail, and I can work with that later. Don't forget that too much detail, too much shadow detail, too much vibrant color all begins to suggest this is not a real this is not a real image. We know it's digital, but things begin to look too perfect, and people see it as a screenshot straight away. As for me, and what do I use? Moving on to the simplest tool ever, I use simply the Snipping Tool in Windows 11. So there's an aircraft coming in. So we are. Clunky. I mean, once it's up, it's up forever. So snip. Click on the Snipping Tool. There we are. There it's showing there. Screen will go dark. I'm just keeping an eye on my cursor to see where it is. There we go. I'll pull that down. And generally, I found it quite hard to see my cursor on that image. It doesn't really matter because you're going to resize this later. Take the area of the screen that you want, drag it, lift, and there we are. It's taken that image for you. You can take as many as you want here. But the first thing I would say is take as much of the screen as you possibly can. You can remove off unwanted features early if you've got any pop-ups or anything showing to a degree. But really, obviously, for a screenshot, you want the full screen. Here am I in 4K. So we'll have a look at this image and I'll walk you through how I'm going to treat it. I think that's what I'll do first, and then I'll show you about how you can use the replay tool to really get some stunning shots, and I'll talk a little bit about composition as well. So meanwhile, most importantly, I remember to save this, and I'll just save it as tester. Okay, it doesn't really matter what it is. There we go. That's gone into my pictures file. And for the rest of the work, now I'm going to leave this running in the background. Depends on your system. But for the rest of the work now, I'm going to use something called Adobe Photoshop Express. But there are lots of other graphics programs out there with filters on them. You don't need anything more simple than what was available on a mobile phone. The general principles are straightforward. The key thing is not to overdo it and to keep it simple. It's worth noting that Adobe Photoshop Express is available as a free app on Apple and Android and Windows platforms. It's very basic. You can only really do one image at a time. I did all of mine via this route, have to say, but it has got some quite impressive tools on it. I said screenshot, crop, and then just very basic adjustments. So let's have a look at this. So firstly, it's right and best if you get it in camera right first, rather than having to worry about the crop. I'm quite happy with the crop, but I'll show you the crop tool. You move on to the crop section, and you can see I can move this here, but I've got a lot of movement. Okay, it's not locked. But if I find roughly the image that I want to hold, we'll sort of have it from there. And I'll kind of say maybe I want less sky in there. If you go onto original, it'll do its best to adjust to that format, and then you can just move around. See how neat that was? I'll do it again for you. No, I'll do it again for you. So there we are. You've got your image. When it initially opens up, because I've put it onto original, if you click on free size, you can just put it where you like. I'm in 4K. Perhaps if you're wanting to 1080, you don't have to worry as much, and you could zone in here. But it doesn't really matter. I can click and drag on the corner handles here. But let's say that I kind of like more or less this image. I'll click on original there. You've got all kinds of options here for how you want to use the screenshot. What it doesn't have is 3:2, which is really, really odd. Okay, so the crop is one click. Second click is, well, I would go down to portrait here. If you click on the top, the three rings together, go down to portrait. Now, this is going to blow your mind. I find it depends what I am looking at, but I start with a very rough vignette. It's called Vignette Glow as a filter here. Now, you're thinking, how on earth am I going to get something decent out of that? Well, firstly, I'm looking to create imperfection, not perfection. And secondly, the vignette is a really clever way. It's been incorporated as a photographic tool to draw attention to the core of an image, or the part of the image that you want people to be looking at. It's actually a genuine photographic effect. Sometimes if you've got the wrong lens hood on and you're shooting through the lens, and you get the shadow. The image captures the edge of the hood. So that's one way in which it can happen. So it's a kind of natural effect. Remember, we're looking to produce something that is not looking too perfect, and we can play with some of these settings as well. At the bottom here, I can just adjust the slider as to how much vignette I actually get, but I'm actually looking for this blown out look. Don't worry about it too much at the moment, because what we'll do, it's increasing both the glow as well and the vignette, so it's a bit kind of rough as a tool, because what we're going to do is we're going to go back now for our third step, and we're going to make some basic adjustments, and this is key. Okay, now it's a little bit more than one click, but these are very simple to play with. Okay, firstly is the exposure. Don't forget you can change how the contrast of an image by the weather in the first place, but if I just drop down the exposure here, you see you've got a dramatic difference going on. Okay, and I'm also thinking that vignette's a bit strong, but I'll just work out. Notice how suddenly this is starting to feel, more like a photograph. Look at how the colors are working here. Okay, and the next thing that I'm going to do is drop down on the highlights. Okay, so if you notice, if I drop down the slider right there, look at what's happening in the clouds. Okay, sometimes you find that dropping the highlight slider down makes a big difference. Sometimes it doesn't, but it's very helpful for giving you a little bit more detail. So I'll just drop that down a tiny little bit there. Shadows, now on some of the images, I'll talk you through this, but the shadow detail can really add a sense of realism. If I move this, you can see, if you look at the dark shadows, you can see there's a little bit more kind of detail showing. That can be really helpful, particularly if you're looking at the underside of an aircraft. Increasing the shadow detail can reveal some of the features that are there that give it that sense of, this is a genuine image. Whites, bring down the whites, and you may well see a big difference here, or not, as the case may be. This isn't probably the best image to look at. And then blacks, and bring that down, so if you notice, if that's down there, then the intensity of the black increases, and we can move towards something that's beginning to look like a photograph. I'm just looking at the colors and the contrast of the colors in that far airplane there, and I'm aware, and I'm going to go back to the vignette at the beginning that I took. Okay, and I'm going to reduce that vignette down. Okay, right, and we begin to get somewhere that it's just looking, there's just little signs, subtle signs. There we are. That's beginning to look like an image to me. Okay, look like a photographic image. Now the other trick is to add a bit of sharpening. Once you get into this You can add selective sharpening, but I do it across the whole if you're really looking to make a difference. If you go down to the settings here, it's got details, I think, there, which is further down. If you click on details, you've got sharpen, and if I raise the sharpen, you'll see that suddenly more detail starts to appear. And what it does is it takes the focus. There we are. If we bring that up there, it sort of takes the focus off the softer parts of the image, and your eye's drawn first before you look at other stuff and think, oh, is that real or isn't infill? You're looking towards this other, sharper. It's actually that the marker for me is the rear aircraft. That's what's making it real for me, and then the front aircraft is picking this up. If I took this image again, I might reduce the weather conditions so that we didn't have quite as much white here. But look at the detail that we've got alongside the aircraft there. Going back to that vignette again and just having a look at reducing that down a little bit more. Doesn't have to be as strong as that, just a little bit. There we go. And there we are. That for me is getting near to looking like a real image. Look at the way that the glow, it's the glow that kind of, sometimes when you get an overexposure, this is very well exposed image, but you get an overexposure sometimes and you can see areas where you're seeing less detail, and that's what's happening here. And that all adds to the sense of realism. And saving it is really simple. Just press save and share up there, and there you go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through now one or two images, if you'll forgive me, and I'll say compositionally while they work, and then I'll show you how to use the replay tool to really get some excellent angles. Well, boy, I could have picked easier image to work with, but I still sort of stand by this, and I'm just looking and comparing the two. It's subtle, but subtlety is everything. So the first thing is left-hand image is the original, right-hand image is the adjusted. So firstly, if you look to the sky in the right-hand image, you've just got a little bit more detail. It doesn't really count for much, but actually the colours in the right-hand image are a little bit warmer. What's happening is it's not really that they're warmer, it's that there's a little bit more detail and they're darker on the right-hand side and the left-hand side. That's because of the vignette. So you'll notice there's a very slightly different tone in the image. Also, the thing that makes a difference here is the pulling down of the highlights. If you look at the tail of each of the airplanes, particularly the rear airplane, you'll see that there's a little bit more is highlighted, oddly enough, the dirt that's there. Probably it's a little bit strong. The other thing that kind of puts an imperfection in it is probably a bit too strong here, is the increase in the sharpening. And what that does is it makes the images kind of have a little bit of bite, a little bit of grit. And actually, this is imperfect. This is a bit too strong. But if you look down to the wheel of the four aircraft towards the front, you'll see that there's a little bit more grain, a little bit more grit that makes you kind of And when you add these kind of things together, I think it makes all the differences in the world. As I say, this is quite a hard image to work with in the first instance. But yeah, when you see things beginning to break up a little bit, your mind is sort of saying, oh yeah, that looks like a photograph. I freely admit that the kind of effects you use are down to personal choice. On the left-hand side here, for example, is a Phoenix A320. And this is shot under good light. If I wanted to make this more realistic, I think I probably could by adding a little bit more grain to simulate the fact that the camera's being pushed, but it still looks very clean. On the other hand, if you kind of think with the right hand side image here, I'll push it and will be deliberately creative with it, and then nobody really knows where the image has begun. I can imagine the right hand image being used as kind of in a glossy magazine, for example. Both might feature, but the right has a sort of creativity behind it. Looking at the overhead panel here, notice the composition, which I think obviously draws the eye, but also this looked a bit too clean for me. And in the right hand image, I've applied the vignette. Look at how the overhead panel just pops out with that color. Looks like if you can't fake it, then push the other way and make out you're being really creative with the images. And again, these images all have come about the same kind of style. So left hand, right hand image. But the right hand one for me, I'm thinking, oh, somebody's been really creative with that. You can't tell quite how it originated. This is a harsher example, but I think it really works. In the old days where we used to use color slide film, there was something called push processing. What you would do is you would underexpose the image first, and then you would push the process to bring it back up. And that meant that you got really saturated colors, and it's a very stylized, kind of unique kind of image that surfaces from this. And it also depended on the type of film that you were using. So I prefer the image on the right. It kind of speaks to me of that kind of genre, rather than the image on the left where I'm thinking, oh yeah, that does look like a screensaver. Nighttime images are another playground. Here you've got an image of an engine on the left and an engine on the right. Still feel there's a subtle difference in the right, where you can see that I've really darkened the shadows here to try and sort of mimic how the light's actually harsh and how it's really difficult to capture an image like this and hold everything in range. If you look to the image to the left, there's a lot more kind of shadow detail. It's not what you want there really in the middle of night. That's not kind of realistic, whereas the one on the right looks a bit more realistic to me. Probably needs a little bit more work, but also I think that the lighting, the runway lighting, if you looked at that very small yellow square, you can see it's got a little bit more punch to it. And I think, yeah, that's sort of saying to me, yeah, this is looking more genuine on the right. Everyone knows that nighttime photography is always a struggle anyway. But once again, you've got the image on the left. It is credible, but the image on the right here, again, it's just playing with the shadows. You can see that there's a lot more texture coming to come off the runway. Almost the reflections become deeper and clearer. The aircraft, I've allowed that to blow out a little bit more, which is what happens when kind of harsh lights hits things. But also some of the lighting, if you look very carefully in the cockpit, is a little bit more subdued. If you look to the right-hand side, look at the blues, see the difference in the blues. So all these things make a difference. But certainly you can get to a point where you're beginning to think, hang on, how real is that? Never mind whether or not a Boeing would move in front of a Airbus A3 Phoenix, whatever it is, I've forgotten, and it's got late. But yeah, suffice to say. So just some examples of what is possible. Okay, now having looked at how we can capture images using screenshots and how we can improve them, just looking at the cockpit camera and the external camera, let's move on to using the showcase camera in combination with flight control replay. And this is really simple stuff. It doesn't even matter if you crash your aircraft or whatever, but what you're wanting to do is to record a flight that is in closest proximity to scenery that you'd like to capture around the aircraft. So your first task is to just carry out a flight, and we're going to record what we're doing. I'm going to click ready to fly here, and that will take me onto the runway itself. You don't have to worry about any camera views or anything like that. All you need to do to start off is fly the aircraft. But however, I am just going to adjust the light just so that it's a little bit better. I mean, I could choose to fly, in the morning with the sunrise or the sunset. However, what I'm wanting is detail on the ground. So I'm just adjusting to a time of day that's going to work for me. Now, bearing in mind, I do have like real complex scenery in here, and this may not go well as a quick launch, but we'll give it a go and just see where we are. Most important thing is go to flight control replay there. You drop that down, FCR embedded, okay? Click on record. That's what you need to do. And then crucially, don't forget to do this. Click on that circle, the record circle. Otherwise, you're stuffed. There's two things you need to do here. You need to record it, and then you also need to save it at the end. So we're going to record first, right? Everything that we do now, and you can leave that there. Everything that we do now is being recorded, and then we're going to be able to play it back from different angles afterwards. So I'm just going to take off in this aircraft. What I'm doing, apart from basic things like make sure that you do take the gear up, the flaps up or whatever, because that will show. I don't even know roughly what speed I'm going to take off in this, but we'll have a little look. Just let that roll down the runway. Okay, all I'm worried is taking off. Right, let's just lift up the nose there, see where that gets to. Okay, it can be a little bit rough. There we are. doesn't really matter. Also, the thing is that when you do the replay, elements of the scenery are going to return. So if they're not properly rendering to start off with, they will render properly afterwards when you're in flight control replay. So what we can now do, you don't even have to land. We can press the circle button and then we can press the stop button. Okay, then we press save and it will save that, and it saved it according to the time that I'm recording at the moment. That's there permanently. Now we can escape out. We can restart, which will spawn us back on the runway. And then what we're going to do is we're going to load that flight in, and you'll watch it fly itself. So here we are back on the runway. Let it do its thing, ready to fly. But what we then do is go to flight control replay here, click load replay, and you'll see that the top one is in fact the replay that produced all of the images that I produced before. The lower one is the image from today. If I click on that and I press play, the aircraft will simply take off now. You can see it moving, but also you can scratch here on the right hand side. So there we are, there's our takeoff. Let's just go back here. If we roll this, it will play back for us, and we can pause at any time. Don't be fazed by the stuttering. I find the performance can be a bit mixed, but if you just don't rush it, then it doesn't stutter as much. But yeah, don't be fazed by it, just stick with it. Let's say we want to just pause it at this point here, or we'll let it go a little bit further. I'm just looking at the aircraft on the left. Okay, a bit higher, that'll do there. Just looking around there, we've got some aircraft here, and yeah, we're just taking off. And if I look externally, what have I got? I'm just off the ground, should be able to move around. There's our takeoff there. So similar image, but much more detail. I notice we've got British Sugar in the background there. So there we go. Let's see what we can do, and we can play with this and take our image. But first thing we do is you might want to get away with FCR embedded. I just find if I click on that, I can get away with it. But I can also move my controls. I can also go on to, if I go to the top here, I can go on to, crucially, the showcase camera. There we are. Now, I mentioned earlier that in the showcase, the camera will move left and right on my gamepad. There we are. So I can get all kinds of angles here. And that's how you see how I'm managing to really form something that is striking. It's mastering the drone camera is key, really, but it's fairly straightforward. You've got all the time in the world to be able to do this. There we are, not the best in the world, but also don't forget we can make some changes too. We can change the weather as we hold this in a still. So let's just have a look and see what the different weather might look like. So there we are, giving us all kinds of weather effects. And the light being on the British Sugar and the aircraft in the background could well give it a little bit more appeal. Don't really know. Don't forget you can also change the cloud setting as well. We can have clear skies. There we are, and you can see the difference. Clear skies can be quite disappointing, can't they? High level clouds, you can have broken clouds, but my favorite is scattered clouds. Don't forget, if you're taking an evening shot, yes, you might want to kind of say, let's have a little bit more evening glow in this, you know, or opposite time of the day here. And also notice that you can get some nice little night shots here. So let's say that we wanted a kind of night shot. We can start with that. There we are. Now I'm already thinking of myself, well, I'm kind of, there's a bit too much sky in this. I can sort it later, or I can move it on to whatever I want to. There we are. There's a kind of angle of the wheels up in the air, different angle. You can see what we are able to play with here. But say if I want to screenshot that, well, it's just much the same again. So if I just click and just do my, you know, snip, let's get that called up. The Snipping Tool is the app. Okay, we'll have a new snip. Thank you very much. So there's a initial rough idea. It's not particularly perfect. Then let's go in using the same method. We're going to save this, see what we can do with it. I'll call it tester 3. I'm saving it to my pictures file, and I'm going to shut down there. I'm going to open up the pictures file, find it, and there we go. In the background, let's just find that. There we are, tester 4, open it. I can open it in whatever I want to work with, but we'll put Adobe Photoshop Express. There we go. Opens up there. Give it a couple of seconds. And then let's look at the crop for this. So I can crop in. I can sort of say, well, actually, I want less sky. And I can say, can you go back to the original, but can you give me less sky? If I click on original, it will sort of do that for me. Can you see it's done that? So there's a second illustrator for you there. Not quite right for me. This isn't right for me. I wouldn't be entirely happy with this, but it's purely an example. And then we can, I've cropped it quite a lot. So try and get it right in camera first. Then we can try that adjustment. Can't we? We don't have to use the vignette, but I do find it kind of can sometimes be helpful. It might blow this out of the water really in an unhelpful way. Let's just see what we get with the vignette glow. Okay, you can see. There we are. Similar method, sort of a nighttime shot. Still looking a bit soft, a bit gamey. Let's see what we can do in terms of adjustments here. So exposure, we can bring it up. Oddly enough, yeah, that kind of slightly blown out feeling kind of works a little bit more maybe. Contrast you could touch, we could pull down the highlights a bit, see if that's going to improve things. Gives us more detail in the thing, in the sky. Shadow detail, not really making a huge amount of difference. I think the thing that will make the difference here will be, let's do the whites as well. Let's have a look and see what difference we can make on the sharpening. If we go to details and sharpen the image, see what we can come up with. And not entirely successful here. Sometimes you have to work at these. But yes, sort of maybe sort of beginning to get there. So this was just a very quick example. And that's just how you are able to position the aircraft. You can see lots of angles that I might be able to do there that I'd highlighted before. So I hope that's helpful. But what I will do, this is not the best example in the world, but it's on the fly and real, is that I'll highlight now why I think some of the images are working and just refer to some of the rules of composition. Okay, and just to help you on your way, you may well choose to disagree with me, but I'm just wanting to illustrate how some of the rules of composition that feel kind of a bit counterintuitive actually really add up to making a screenshot that is going to really capture people's imagination. So firstly, this image here, where we have tower, bridge just to the left and the shard, and then the aircraft to the right. First, you remember that rule of thirds. If you divide the image into thirds, and if you think about putting two horizontal lines across the image to split it, you'll notice that the shard and the aircraft are along 1/3, upper third, and tower bridge is along the second third moving down. So I'm not sure that's hopefully you'll be able to get what I'm saying. Also, there's a certain rule of a triangle, and so the shard, the aircraft, and tower bridge, if you look, make 3 strong points in an image. There's also something called the leading line that's helpful. The river isn't too distracting, but what it does is it leads the eye into the picture and throughout. And also the sky is what we would call the negative space, and negative space can be really important as well. But every picture kind of tells a story and has a sense of anticipation. Notice how the aircraft is off of center, which kind of is slightly awkward in the way. The one thing that I don't think quite works with this image is what looks like the red kind of looks like a block of flats really. That doesn't sort of seem right to me, but you can get the idea of what we're trying to achieve. Okay, here's the rule of thirds again. You can see if you were to create the horizontal lines and form that grid, that the wheels of the aircraft here sit right within that first kind of quadrant, and then almost opposite it is the shadow. Also, notice how that rule of thirds kind of encourages you, it's what you crop out of an image and not necessarily what you include. It seems counterintuitive. Shadow becomes the main focus here. Get rid of the upper point of the aircraft. It's not really adding anything. Also, the direction of the light is on the wheels, and that gives a sense of movement and a kind of realism. The contours are popping here, in my view. It's just my view, and also notice how the vignette is really helpful here, because it's a dramatic photo, it's filled with shadow. The vignette doesn't look as severe. If you put that level of vignette in another photograph, it would look really, really obvious. But in context here, it works and it frames things nicely. Also breaks up the lines because it's a very sharp line, straight line image. Breaks up the lines. And look at the runway itself is what we call a leading line, a bit like the river before into the distance. So don't know. Let me know what you think. It's a really good example of how, well, it's called implied presence. You know something big is going on, but it's featured in the shadow. This one is a classic rule of thirds here. As the Millennium Wheel approaches, look at that vertically along that first vertical third. And also notice the horizon is bang on the first third horizontally across. And notice how the river and the shoreline pull your gaze directly towards the London Eye here. The use of the shadow, I think, works very well. And the calmness further on into the image through the Thames, looking towards those buildings just beyond the Houses of Parliament, contrasts with the energy right at the front here. And the openness of the sky softens the original image. So yes, it's a kind of atmospheric realism. And notice how you can focus on areas, on stronger parts of the images, and your eye skips over the negative parts of the photogrammetry that are definitely there. I mean, that Houses of Parliament is a pretty poor model, to be honest, if you fly any closer to it. But yeah, anyway, it's purely what you kind of think. Few rules, few kind of guidelines. Hope that you enjoyed that, folks. Take care, stay safe, and hopefully we can get you producing screenshots where people look at that and they're going, wow, not only how did you do that if then you do it, but how did that photograph get taken? I mean, some things are plainly impossible, but other things, no. But certainly to be able to produce something that doesn't look like a cartoon and makes people think twice, how did you do that? And also, once again, going back to the original point that I made, we pay money for sceneries, but we don't often look. And creating screenshots, something I think very easy to do. I would say, in career mode, if you're waiting around, even if you're on double speed and you're trying to fly your aircraft around and earn more credits, so you can be working on screenshots in the background that you've already prepared. But just do be careful, because you do get stung if you manage to miss those ATC kind of replies that you need to be putting in. But anyway, I hope, folks, that was helpful. Just sharing my passion with everyone else in the community. Take care. Stay safe.